Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm here with Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing. I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works, and we are both here with the Embroidery Nerd. And I'm just going to start off with I really like that fade out. I also like the song. I'm dancing a little bit in the background. You guys can't see that, and it's good that you can't see that because that might be very embarrassing. But I do like the song. Justin's like, I agree. We got this.
I agree. I'm over here I'm trying to share it in the group here.
Dun dun dun. With all of his administrative power. I'm pretty sure you've got, like, you're posting. You can post as the Embroidery Nerd now.
I'm trying.
Buttons, everything. I'm trying a new camera today. Fancy. But today we are talking about. I really should have written it down because I didn't write it down. But we're talking about adjusting designs for different mediums. So that I caught that, summed that up right, Justin.
Yeah. Adjusting designs, whether you're digitizing from scratch or if you have a design you need to edit, and say it was done for something regular like a left chest or a hat design, and you're putting on something that's not going to lend well to your original setup. So just some ideas on how to adjust the design so they work on your new garment or fabric.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull in a couple of comments here. We have Cindy King. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We have Anthony Shen. Good morning from Brisbane, all the way in Australia. I remembered that. We have Javier from Maryland. I was trying to read the name, and then I realized he wrote it out underneath. We have Barb from Minnesota Custom Made. Hello, how are you? And that catches us up. We've got a few people chatting in the comments, but that's always encouraged. And so now I have a question for you, Justin. Let's say I'm average embroiderer Jeff, who is known for his flat embroidery and uninspiring work. And I come to you and I say, Justin, I need a left chest design, but I also want to run it on a hat. Your answer to that without seeing the file is going to be?
Without seeing the file?
Yep, without seeing my art.
When more than likely, I could set it up in a way that'll work for both. Majority of the time. That's not to say that once you see the artwork, there's limitations on a hat because you only have so much room to work with, or simply they may want, only a certain element of the design on the hat when the full design on the chest. But yes, if I know it's going on a hat and a shirt, typically I'll digitize it for a hat, which will then in turn work for a shirt the majority of the time, barring some given situations.
Right. So as a digitizer who digitizes, would you like to know that up front, or would you prefer it if I came back and said it doesn't work on the hat, but it worked great on the left chest?
Up front, absolutely. Just so there is a few things that if someone's saying that it's specifically only for left chest, there might be sequencing or whatnot that I would do that's may work better for a left chest. But if I know that you're working on both, and a lot of people, they don't want to have several different versions of the file, to have to deal with. So if they can, limit it to the few different files that they have that could work on different garments, then it doesn't bog down their library. So yeah, definitely up front. If I know what's going on, I could try to adjust it in a way, sequencing, underlays, and whatnot that are going to work on kind of a blanket, the amount or the good amount of garments and placements at the same time.
Awesome. So you might have noticed that we have a visitor.
I did notice. I chuckled there.
Hey, Mike, how's it going?
Fine. How's everybody over there?
Awesome. Thank you.
You're good.
Surprise, I dropped the link to the live in the Discord chat for those of you that are in Discord, and Mike has decided that he's going to jump in and join us. So, Mike, barring the subject for tonight, which you thoroughly investigated, do you have any questions?
It's How much per 1,000 stitches?
The number one question.
I don't know. I don't even know what's the live about.
So we're talking about setting up a file for, to be multi-garment or to change between one garment and another garment.
Ooh, are you talking like team names or?
Ooh.
No, it's mainly like if you have a design, say like, I digitized a design for you, and originally you told me, oh, it's going to be left chest on, a 50-50 polo and a hat. And I give you whether it's one design that works for both or two different designs, but then you get towels or you get beanies or something like that where the design's not necessarily going to work. So there's different factors that you have to look at as far as densities, underlays, if you're going to be using a topping, stuff like that. So it's adjustments when you're running into a fabric or a garment where your original file is not working.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely agree that there's a lot of factors to consider when you're looking at doing that kind of thing. I guess if I was going to ask a question about that, I would ask, how important is it realistically? Or is it something that only us as embroiderers are going to pay attention to and really notice? Is the average schmuck going to care?
Mm-hmm.
I would say they should.
Right.
But will they? The dumb guy won't notice, and the smart guy will think it's supposed to be that way. The only kind of rule I've ever adhered to is if it'll fit on a hat, even if it's not destined for a hat, digitize it for a hat.
That's kind of my approach as well. I mean, if it is size that'll work on a hat, and especially with my repeat customers, I kind of know their tendencies. There's one customer that does a lot of high school sports. So I know he's going to be doing the gauntlet. He's going to be doing polos. He's going to be doing sweatshirts. He's going to be doing hats. He's going to be doing beanies. So I keep that in mind when I'm digitizing, even though he may say, oh, this design's, for left chest. I have it in the back of my head. This is going on a hat eventually. So, yeah.
So
but,
do you look at this too? Like there's differences in the sewing fields on different hats. Like the flat brim hats with a high profile tend to have a shorter sewing field than like a flex fit, where it can roll up a little bit on the needle plate and get a little bit higher.
I tend to try to stay at 2 1/4 tall. That size is kind of the best average that I've found across the board as far as machine types, hat types. Because I'm seeing now where customers are coming to me with a ZSK and a Barrett telling me they can go higher than 2 1/2. And it's like, well, if you feel comfortable doing that, I'll digitize the design at 2 3/4 or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But if the design lends itself to working at 2 1/4 tall, I tend to max it out. I'll push it to 2 1/2 if I know those customers that are running, a Tajima, that I know that they can run it on a flex fit just as well as 2 1/4. I'll push it. But yeah, there's that range. There's also those smaller home embroidery machines that I know cap out at 2 inches, or I've even seen these weird stuff where they tell me that they have 1.9 inch to work with on a brother or something like that. So
yeah, the smaller machines with the smaller capabilities, especially the ones that have to mash the hat flat, they don't have a proper cap driver.
Right.
Somebody might have an older machine, like the older Tajimas that are still rocking the old wide field hat hoops that really aren't big enough to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I got to watch out for those, but I would agree with the 2 1/4. I've got one design that pushes up into, I think it's about 2.7 high, but it's tall and pointy. So by the time you're up at that very top bit, it matters less how much it has to move across the needle plate at that point. So under very certain circumstances, even on a mid-profile hat like a Flex Fit 6277, you can push that far, but yeah, that 2 1/4 tall is pretty ubiquitous.
Right.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I've noticed that when you start going up above 2.25, sometimes you start running out of stabilizer. You're so high up on that peak that your stabilizer stops. And
Yeah.
But like Mike just mentioned, as far as I've ran into that problem as well, where the stabilizer's not up there, and sometimes I'll actually kind of do a taller piece in the center where it kind of runs up the crown of the hat. And if it is something where it's just a few small elements right in the center, and it's not something across the whole top of the crown, especially something circular or rectangular, if it's running across that whole front end of that crown and you're trying to push it up at 2.5 or above, you're going to get so much.
Yeah, it's not going to look like the original design at all.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't get a 2.75-inch license plate to go across the front of my hat.
Well, you can, because you could sew them from scratch.
Exactly.
Don't tell Justin. He doesn't know that yet.
You can cheat and run it flat and build your own hat.
You know, technically, it's not cheating. It's called creative winning. And the rule was it had to go on a hat. It was a hat. At the end of the day, it was a hat. Not at the beginning of the day.
Eventually, it was a hat.
Yeah.
Eventually, it was a hat.
You didn't sew it on a hat.
Yeah.
I mean, potatoes, tomatoes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But if we're going to circle back to the original question and doing stuff differently for different garments, I would have to say I pay more attention to different sizes than I do with different garments. I have to put way more thought and time into a full-size jacket back design than I do a left chest or a cap. Well, not more time and attention, different time and attention. I find there's more factors to consider changing from a 4-inch design to an 11-inch design versus going from a polo to a Dickies.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a polo and a Dickies are both pretty stable. It's when you run into like
polo's
jerseys.
Garbage. That stretchy. Thank God the circles I run in don't use a lot of them.
Right.
I'm gonna start sending business your way. All of the left chest polos and the dry fit shirts that look like they're.
So, Mike, I know the ever so popular Richardson 112s or any hat that mimics that with the mesh. Do you get a lot of requests for a flag on the side or a city name on the side? And if so, how do you?
Not really. I've done a couple. It's really not that big of a deal. Like to put a little field background in the mesh. I mean, it depends on the design. If it's something really loose, like if someone tells me they want their phone number on the side of their hat on the mesh, I'm going to tell them to pack sand, because like, is it doable? Yeah. Is it going to look great? No. Even if I put a little rectangle field behind it, it's not going to look the best. And come on, who's pulling a phone number off of a hat, really?
Right.
But if someone wants a little tiny logo on the side, then okay, I'll try to fill it in as much as I can and stay true to the design and stuff like that. So that doesn't really bother me too much. I mean, we haven't seen a Richardson around here in 10 months.
I've got one in there.
Oh, lucky.
Do you remember back in the day when you got Richardson hats?
Or any trucker for that matter. You just go onto your supplier website and order a trucker hat, and hey, it would ship. It would show up.
But yeah, I mean, going back to something like that, where the sides of the hats, and that's something that I've seen as a common question in the groups. How do I deal with that? And like you said, it really depends on what they're trying to embroider. But the different things you could do is you do kind of the knockdown fill. Whether you're doing you really don't want to do the light density fill on that because you're trying to cover up those holes of the mesh. So the different things that I do suggest to people is if you're running a black mesh, you run a black fill behind it. So you're giving that the logo or the lettering a stable flat surface to embroider on. Another thing to do is I always suggest using a hat backing, which is of course the thicker tearaway, in the same color or similar to the mesh. If you got a black mesh, don't use white backing. That's just gonna make it look even
Use
worse.
the
But
white cutaway. You're fine. White cutaway.
yeah, but
I mean,
yeah, I
you
mean,
would appreciate,
White
you would
cutaway,
approach it
pink
differently.
bobbin. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, you would approach it differently if I came to you and I said, Justin, I want to put a phone number on the side of a 6277 FlexFit versus, hey, Justin, I have this Richardson and they want me to put for cheapest quote, call Joe at, and here's his
Right.
phone number.
right. So yeah, so those are the things that especially if you're dealing with the end user. It's kind of where I work both sides of it. So I am talking to the end user as an embroiderer during the day. So you can make those suggestions, like you said. Someone wanting a phone number on a mesh hat, my first inclination is to say it's probably not going to look as much as as good as you want it to. A couple solutions: don't get a mesh hat, don't do the phone number. If they're adamant about it, but yeah, it's that feel behind it. Definitely use that hat backing if I am talking to an embroiderer, not an end user. But there's those different solutions that you can come up with to try to fight against that different material, which is the mesh in this case, to get around it. But those are the kind of the creative solutions that we're kind of talking about today that you can hopefully achieve what the customers want.
Yeah. The one that now that I'm thinking about it, it does come to mind is toques. That's a whole.
Wait, what's that?
Beanie.
Toque.
Oh, got it.
Toques.
Sure.
The fuzzy things you wear on your head.
Got it.
It's funny. It's funny because I had a customer from Canada, and the first couple of orders on my order form, I asked what kind of garment it's going on, and the first couple of orders was that. I'm like, what is this? So I actually had to Google it, and I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense now.
That's Canadian for beanie.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, to us, beanies are the little hats with the propeller on the top.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
funny.
those are the ones that if we're talking material specific, those are the ones I find are way out there. If you don't lock those down and control the heck out of those, you're losing your design somewhere.
Right.
Ultimately, it comes down to us as embroiderers that, like you said earlier, Mike, the smart ones are happy it's there and think it's supposed to be that way, and the dumb ones don't notice. And it's our job to make sure that they get the best embroidery for that application, whether it's sending a file back and getting it changed or asking for your digitizer to do it. So it'll work on multiple things. Because I've seen it where they'll say, I want a left chest and a hat out of this design. And it's like, nope, you're getting two files because one file ain't going to cut it.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, for sure.
And when it comes to beanies, it's now you're dealing with a porous material. You're dealing with a material that if you hoop too tight, you're going to stretch the crap out of it, and then when you embroider it and put it back, it's going to just bunch all up. You have toppings to try to help you, water soluble topping typically. But yeah, if you are running into it where a small line of lettering underneath the design works fine on the left chest on a hat, it may fall right into that material that's in the beanie. So again, you can to solve this, you can add fill areas for small elements like text. The popular knockdown stitch, which is just kind of that low density fill area. That's real popular on beanies I've seen. And actually, I think it gives it kind of a cool look. It almost gives it an embossed look. Because if you do the whole design and if you're working with a black beanie and you do black thread, you just kind of do the contour shape of the design, throw down that light fill. It's gonna stabilize your beanie. It's gonna knock down the pile of the beanie. And like I said, it kind of embosses that area that the design goes on. I like that personally. There's customers that I've suggested doing that, and they just don't like the look.
Yeah, it's a great look, and I find it's the only way to get thinner elements onto a beanie without losing them. almost every beanie we do that's got kind of loose design. So say it's letters that are spaced out, or other smaller satins, other small elements. Almost every beanie we do that has a design like that gets a background field. It doesn't even matter. So it becomes like a patch.
Right.
But we don't have to mess around with toppings. We don't have to mess around with anything. We just mash that beanie down in an aesthetically pleasing, field of dreams there, and let her buck.
Yeah. I think definitely the topping on beanies can definitely be avoided using these type of techniques. Adds to your stitch count, but the end result is I think it'll look better to the end customer. Another thing too, just like hats, when you're talking to customers, sometimes you have to explain to them you don't have to have your full design on the spectrum of garments that you're getting. If you're getting sweatshirts to polos to hats to beanies, sometimes it's that branding where you can do full design left chest that has the school name and the sport name. And if it's a Wildcat, say, okay, let's just throw the Wildcat on a left panel hat. That's something popular right now. Same with the beanie. You have those restrictions. It may fit technically, it may fit in the area that you have the sewing area for the beanie, but because of those issues, the small little lettering that says such and such high school baseball in this small little area, well, it's not going to look good in the end. Do your Wildcat head. You're going to be wearing it to your sport. You're going to be wearing it to your school. You're going to be identifying that it's your brand, your mascot. So things like that, where you can kind of shy away the customer from the elements that aren't going to work.
Yep.
So you're saying take the phone number off the hat and put it on the left chest.
So they take the phone number off the hat and put it on the business card.
Put it on the
exactly.
Yeah.
The only time I could see phone numbers is screen printed large in the back of a T-shirt.
Really large.
Yeah.
I get that if people are especially if you have staff or workers that are out and about and someone says, oh, I've been looking for an AC company. Glance, they see the phone number, they can actually read it from 20 feet away. It's advertising that way, but yeah.
But even then, like, unless that person's standing in line for something, you can chase them down with a notepad. I'm all on board for almost anybody in any, whether it's a club or a business or whatever. Put your your city and state or province or whatever, or a country, or get to that level. But I mean, I don't need your zip code off your T-shirt.
You don't want to know my address for my left chest?
Yeah, if I'm close enough, long enough to jot that down on a sticky note without tapping you on the shoulder, then I'm probably not a customer you want to have anyway.
I've had some art pieces that it's like at the bottom, it's like Instagram handle, email, website, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is, you're just paying for 5 inches of area on your shirt that you could be doing something cool in.
Yeah.
I actually had it that they took a picture of the side of the truck and they sent me this design from the picture off the side of the truck, and it said, for the best quote, call, I think it was Carl, and then it had a phone number. And so I sent them the design without, for the best quote, call Carl. I just sent them the logo, and they came back and they're like, no, we need all of it. Yeah. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah. Who's Carl?
Yeah. So on every single one of their shirts that they did, it says, for best quote, call Carl. I was like, Carl's the one paying for the shirts. That's who Carl is.
Yeah. Well, then he's going to have a lot of leftover shirts if he ever up and leaves.
Yep.
That's too funny.
Man. Yeah.
But they also, they did the design. It was left chest on silk polos. Not polos, but silk T-shirts, the dry fit stuff, because they were outside all day. They did that, and then they also did snow removal, so it ended up being the heavy, not Carhartt, but they were my favorite brand, the Dry Duck, because they bought them through me. And so they don't get the Carhartts. They get the ones I like to do. So it ended up being them, and then they wanted the toque, is what you call it, the beanie.
Toques.
Yeah, the
No,
toque.
a toque is something entirely different, Jeff.
They wanted the fuzzy hat that you pull over your ears in the middle of winter when it's cold.
Say it
And
with me.
then the next season they ended
Ooh.
up wanting they wanted hats. And so I know for every single one of those I slightly tweaked the file just a little bit. You know, when I went with the coat, added a little bit more pull comp because it got a little bit thicker. And I changed my underlays too because I use the I like to use a different underlay on a shirt than I do on a coat, just because the coat's it's such a stable material. It's that nice, thick, heavy canvas that you can really get away with, you know, bumping up your densities a little bit and adding some more lift underneath them. So
yeah. I just noticed Suzanne wrote in the comments there that she does get a lot of specific requests to have a phone number on their gear. And you know, I talk a big game, but if the customer really wants it, then they're going to get what they want. I don't believe the customer is always right, but I believe they get what they want. So
yeah, I mean, there's always I'm going to go down the street and they'll throw it on whatever.
I'll do my best to convince them why certain elements in certain places are maybe not a great idea. But in the end, if they want it and they're paying for it, then that's what they'll get. And I'll do my best to make it look good. I'm not gonna flake out on it just because I don't like it. But yeah,
there's a lot of times where I'll take the approach that, you know, I've said my piece. I'll tell them, hey, you know, my experience, this isn't gonna look right. You're not gonna like it, and they insist. Okay, it's not gonna cost you any more to have that phone number where I know it's not gonna work. To digitize it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then 9 times out of 10, once they see it, all right, take it off. It's always easier to remove it than to add something. So.
Absolutely.
See, and I can totally see that same customer being the one that wants the file later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
Short answer is just give it to them. But yeah, that's a whole other debate.
Yeah.
So, well, guys, I got to jump out. I just wanted to pop in and say hi because, well, you said I could. So.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Thank you for
thanks for joining, Mike.
Yeah, fun chat, guys. We'll catch up with you again real soon.
Yeah.
All right, take care, Mike.
All right, take it easy,
Talk
boys.
to you later.
Bye.
It's really good sometimes to be able to put a face with a name.
Yes.
And a different face than what you see in a Facebook picture, because those can be completely off. But
it's funny when we saw him below. We can on our screen here we can see people that are not popped up. As soon as I saw his face, like, oh, there's Mike.
And you chuckled just a little bit. You were trying to finish your thought, and you started chuckling just a little bit. I was like, we lost him. But I'm going to catch up on some comments here. We have Cindy saying, I can see it working if you have the software file so that any adjustments can be made. That's to change files from different materials. Barb says, sometimes when you say the hat, the person may mean a beanie. I run into that a couple of times. I've definitely had it where people have called it more than one thing, and I've been like, wait, what? You know, like 10 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. We have Donald here, finally able to catch a live show. Welcome. Cindy says she does phone numbers on the sides all the time. I completely believe that because I've seen it. I've seen a lot of people want it, and it just, you know, usually I'll throw it on the side of something and I'll stick it like 6 feet away and say, just so you know, this is what it's going to look like. And then it starts up a whole new conversation as to whether or not it's actually going to go on there. Because usually they say it needs to be bigger. And you're like, well, you can't have it wrapped from here all the way around to the other side. It's not going to look right. So that's my argument for now. We have Suzanne saying, I like the knockdown too. Love not needing solving. You know, and right now I feel kind of dumb because whenever I do a knockdown, I still use Solvay.
Yeah,
I do. And then I curse as I'm trying to get it out from underneath the light fill. I'm like, man, there's got to be a better way. And apparently now I know the better way. I know why people don't struggle with it as much as I do.
In production, if we can avoid using Solvay, we do, of course, because that's just that extra step.
Yeah. Barb here says, when I hoop a beanie, I use a mighty hoop with a beanie edge taped down with a piece of painter's tape. I use a knockdown stitch under the lettering, or I talk them into a patch in the beanie. And that's actually something I've seen more recently, is a lot more of those faux, well, I'm just going to call them vinyl, but the faux leather, the crazy print. I've been seeing a lot of those with just like a regular name, or, you know, a company name being patched on or appliqued down to the side of a beanie. Troubling times. I mean, I've just seen that more. It seems to be the fad. There we go. That's the word. Trend.
It's kind of, it's the going trend.
So that was this last winter. I saw a lot of that. We have Cindy here saying a walking business card. We do have those too, or we have to do those too. And I've seen quite a few that you just, like, you're standing there and you're talking to them and you're really, really close, and you look down and you squint a little bit and they just keep talking to you. I don't know why you would pay extra to have that super tiny line of text, but they do. So Laura here says, I do work for insurance agents and they like phone numbers that end. I do it for them. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you're going to get somebody who wants it for a very specific reason. I know my realtor, on every one of her shirts, she has her phone number underneath them. But then again, she also makes a commission off of every house she sells. So I can see her wanting her, you know, the realtor company there, as well as her phone number, so that she gets those referrals off of that specific design. I don't know how well it works because I haven't seen her in like 2 years. For various reasons, and now people aren't getting as close as they used to when you would stand there and talk to them. So
right, exactly.
Be interesting to see how that would work out. So Suzanne says, I actually throw in a freebie without, and they usually reorder my way. You know, it comes down to seeing it. If somebody wants, you know, if they're going to have a left chest and it's going to have their phone number, I was about to read off a phone number and I decided not to give you mine. But if they are going to put their phone number on their shirt, you know, you start running into that height issue with the hat. And if their logo's not, you know, let's say it's just a straight line of text and it's a ½ inch tall, then yeah, maybe you could squeeze a 1/4 inch or, you know, another ½ inch of phone number under there so that it would be readable. But ultimately, like you say, Justin, it's a brand package. They're going to be driving a vehicle, more than likely, that's going to have their company logo on the side and their company phone number on the side. They're going to have their jacket or their sweatshirt or what, I don't know what people in Arizona use. Does it get cold there?
It's relatively.
So like sweatshirts or
yes, sweatshirts, pretty much a hoodie. That's about it.
Hoodies. So, you know, they're going to be wearing that, and then they're going to have their shirt on underneath, and then they're going to have their hat or their beanie, and at the end of the day, they're going to have like 4 of your logos on them at any given time. And how many of those really need to scream, here is my phone number, call me now?
Right, exactly.
Especially when you're getting into a lot of that, because a lot of it is really thin satins. Because it's small and it's thin, and so you're trying to put a thin satin on a hat, and it's going to give you a lot more trouble than it is if you're going to put it on a dry fit shirt. Just like if you're going to throw it on a thick Carhartt, it's going to give you some issues with trying to put their phone number there. And that's why, circling back to the topic that I got distracted from, that's why it's important for us as embroiderers to know, you know, what type of garment are we going to be sewing on. A lot of times, like they'll say left chest, right? But they won't tell you what specific type. So it might be left chest sweatshirt, it might be left chest jacket, it might be left chest heavy coat.
Correct.
You just know that it's going to go here. And so when you do that, Justin, do you try to beefing up all the lines where you can and picture it going, let's say worst case scenario on a heavy coat versus, or a sweatshirt that, you know, one of those fuzzy sweatshirts, do you picture that always? Or when somebody says left chest to you, do you just think polo?
Well, luckily on my order form, I actually have placements, garment types, garment colors, because even the color can be a factor. If you're running white thread on a black hat, typically you're going to want to use extra underlay and or density, because the contrast between the two, the black fabric's going to tend to show through white thread more than if you're a royal blue thread. So on my order form, there's a whole list of things that they have to go through. Size of the design, placement, what type of garment, material, color of the garment. If it is something they don't reference specifically, if it is a new customer, I'll tend to kind of go back to them and say, hey, you say left chest, but what is this going on? Just so I have it in mind. Because that's the hardest thing. From a shirt to a hat, there's kind of that one way to go that'll work on both. But if it is something like a really fuzzy sweatshirt or something like that, I need to know that I need to beef up my pole comps. I need to beef up the underlay. I need to beef up the density. So those are factors that as a digitizer I need to know. And I don't want them to get their file back thinking, oh, I've told them it was left chest, and then in their brain it was on a sweatshirt. I don't know that, and then they look at it and it's like, wow, this design is horrible.
I'm going somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of where I'm going at, where when you're working with especially the more porous or the more textured fabrics like towels or fuzzy sweatshirts or stuff like that, it's almost as the density you definitely need to go up. But as far as the underlays and the pull comps and stuff, you almost want to do reverse of what you do with 3D puff. The 3D puff, you have to have the density to cut the foam, but you're trying to do the least amount of understitches to make sure that the foam has the loft that you want. This is kind of the opposite, where you're going to want to put that extra underlay to kind of push that material down, to flatten that pile, to flatten the textures, to make sure that your top stitches are raised off that surface, or the density, so to make sure that that the terry cloth of the towel is not sticking up in between your satin stitches or something like that. So that's where the adjustments need to come as far as trying to use the design. And that's where it's hard really buying stock designs, and even as a digitizer getting into stock designs. I'm trying to have my designs work for the majority of the stuff that they're intended for. But if someone were to take my design and throw it on a towel, yes, using some topping, using a towel that's not super duper, fuzzy, it may work fine. But there might be times where buying a stock design the way it's set up, it may not necessarily work on something specialty that you're wanting to put it on.
Yeah, I mean it's going to sink in on those towels, and you can also get the pile that's going to shine through, and now you're starting to look at either whether or not you're going to use solvy or add a knockdown or a smash, something to really drive down that pile and put it underneath.
Right.
And even then, you're still probably going to want to beef up your underlays just a little bit. So when it comes to stock designs, one of the things that I see a lot of people do that make stock designs is they'll take a picture of it on a specific object. And I think that that's almost subliminal. Like, here is a picture of this stock design on an apron. And so when you look at that, you're like, it's going to go on an apron. And so I bet you their target, they digitized it as their target being for an apron. And it just seems like I'm starting to see more and more of that versus just like a stock design sewn out on a swatch and cut around and put down and here you go. But I think that's one way that they're trying to fight going on different materials, is to kind of give the end user an idea of, hey, what I intended for this to go on. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are tricks. If you don't have the capability to, if it is something custom that you're working with the digitizer, I would go back to that digitizer. That would be your first choice. They're going to have the native file if you don't have the software they have, or if you don't have any digitizing software. Go back to your digitizer. If it's something simple, I know I don't charge for the revision. Especially with a customer that's an ongoing customer, I'd say, yeah, let me take a look at it. A few tweaks of densities or underlays or something like that. I'm not redoing a design. It's something I'll do for free. Secondly, if it is something where it's a stock design, or maybe it's an old design that you don't remember who digitized it, if you do have the capabilities in the software to do these things, we're adding a knockdown stitch. I know there's software now that kind of do it automatically, kind of give you a contour of it. Adding something like that, changing it, adjusting your densities. I know a lot of editing software are pretty work pretty well with generic DST files and still be able to manipulate densities, whether it's just a overall percentage that you can say increase density by 15%, or you can go in and actually grab certain elements and change the densities and whatnot. I know Wilcom itself, even before I used it as a full blown an old shop that I had a really old version of it, I think it was like one of the best systems to edit designs in. It had a lot of capabilities in it, a lot of different ways that you could actually grab individual elements and just change the settings, the densities, and whatnot individually. Then some designs out there kind of just grab the whole thing and it's all one piece. There's no way to break it up, and you can do things like I said, set a setting, increase density by X amount. I think some machines have that setting as well. Isn't there? Do you know that?
I think some might. I know that my machine, like I can boldface satin stitches on my machine. I can set it to automatically add 0.2 millimeters of pull compensation to every satin.
Yeah, I know the Tajimas have the add a satin width basically, or a satin differential. I know it has that on the machine.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can do density though. I think with the stock onboard text, I can add density to it. But I mean, ultimately that comes down to every machine manufacturer is going to be different. That the older you get, the older Tajimas that have the controller that looks like it was from the 1900s that they had on cars that you started with a crank, and then you've got like the newer controllers on the Tajimas that are touchscreen, and they're just going to have different options on them and sub options. And I think a lot of the like adding the pull compensation or adjusting density that they're putting on controllers now is to try to make sure that they're selling like machines. If I bought a Happy that adds 0.2 pull compensation to everything automatically, and then I buy a Tajima that doesn't, my files are going to look different.
Right.
Or like I came from a single needle genome and I went to an industrial machine and my genome does something to the files. It adds pull compensation and it tightens the density a little bit in the controller on the single needle. And so when I went to an industrial machine, nothing looked the same. I could I could pull a design that I had in the past and I could export the DST from the native software and I'd throw it on the commercial machine and it would not look as good as it did coming off that home machine. And then it became playing with settings until I figured out what was going to work. So I think that's why they add that a lot of that to the controllers now. But software being able to break it up, it falls into the maybe category for me because it depends on how it breaks it up. I've seen, like, if you have a fill that comes down halfway and then goes back up the other half, some softwares will break that into two separate fills. And so you have to make sure that you edit both of them. Or a satin that is, it'll take the satin and it'll break that apart, but then the underlay will be a completely different object.
Right.
And that's when you're starting to need to know more about your software and how it's handling things than just a quick and simple edit. And I think one of the best things, that you can do is when you find a digitizer that you like and you get into that relationship, where you're sending them all your files or, you're using them half the time, if you're starting to look at software, I would ask your digitizer what they're using. If they say I'm using, Design Shop, and they're giving you the native file, I would start looking a lot more heavily at Design Shop, versus if they tell me, hey, I'm using Wilcom, and they're sending me the native file, I'd be looking a lot more heavily at Wilcom, because that they're giving me a native file, and now I can make changes to it that I wouldn't be able to if I didn't have the same software as them.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm going to grab a couple of comments here. So Cindy says that on the topping, she sprays a bottle of water. I've done that, but I've always worried about getting the garment too wet. I should probably do it before they need to pick it up, not as they need to pick it up. Barb says I use my Jiffy garment steamer on the Salvi. I don't have one of those, but I would like to get one.
The steamer works well. Another thing we do is all that excess topping that you rip off, we make a little ball out of it, and then it actually becomes kind of like a tape ball that will remove. You just kind of spritz it. You don't have to get it too wet, just a little bit of spritz, and then you roll that Salvi ball over it, and it picks up the excess.
Nice. Suzanne says they should have some cards in their pockets to pass out. They should always have cards in their pockets to pass out. Probably with something like their phone number, their Instagram handle, their email, their Facebook page.
Yes.
We have Suzanne says, I'm kind of jealous right now seeing a nerd star in both of your backgrounds. They are very limited. There are not very many people out there with them. I do have an extra one, but I didn't say that. Ginger says, me too, about the nerd star. And Christine says, the nerd stars are very cute. I kind of want an AG nerd star now. I don't know about that. They're pretty exclusive. I only know of 4 or 5 people that have them. And I'm pretty sure I mailed them to all 5 of them. Pretty sure. But Suzanne says, I've found that with most good digitizers, I can use the same file on a polo, regular sweatshirt, light jacket, tote, bag, apron, etc. I do ask for edits for hats, beanies, heavy jackets, and polar fleece. And it's important for them to know that too. If you're trying to troubleshoot something, it's important to know exactly what it's being sewn on. Pictures are worth 1,000 words.
Right.
So let me keep going here. We've got Suzanne. I do not like doing adjustments on the embroidery machine except for 5% size change on a one-off. I can honestly tell you I don't think I know how to do a size change on my embroidery machine, because I just do it here. I set my color changes here and I send it over there. I know how to position it and I know how to hit start.
I wouldn't suggest it too much, just because I don't think the machines have a stitch processor like the digitizing software has. So you're going to get the same stitch count on something 5% smaller than you did at the normal size. So if you're trying to drop something 10, 15, 20%, it's not going to do well. The older shop that I worked at, there would be times where on their spec sheet on their design, for left chest, maybe the left chest was at 2.5, and then the notation was, when you run hats, knock it down 5% or 10%. So if, again, getting to a whole other subject of file libraries and on how you save things and the information and whatnot, a lot of times, when dealing with a customer or the company that's either really large in size and has a lot of customers, or that's been around for a long time, they're going to start building up thousands and thousands and thousands of files. So if there's a way of not having 5 different versions of the same design, I think it's a plus. It cuts down on mistakes. It cuts down on, which one did I use on this or that? If you can try to limit the amount of changes to the design and maybe like she said, 5% on the design on a one-off or something that you don't have to go back to the software or back to your digitizer, then it's a quick fix.
Yeah, and as long as you're within that 5 to 10% and you do a test sew and it does okay, I think that's perfectly fine. I've seen people go further, but then it always becomes you have to test sew, because it just depends on the design and what it was originally digitized for, to make sure that it's going to be okay. And now I'm kind of in trouble. I think I'm in trouble. I didn't say that you're not exclusive. I didn't say that. And Cindy says, do we have to blackmail you to get a star? I don't think so. So there's actually been a topic of discussion going on between me and Justin and Matt of how exactly or what we're going to do with the Nerdy the Nerd Star and how we may or may not distribute those, or vice versa. And so we just have to finish that conversation before Jeff gets in way too much trouble for having more than one. Did I peddle that good enough?
I was about to drop out and just leave you alone.
Let me struggle there for a little bit. Flip and flop. Nice. Mike says I will only scale on the machine max 2% if it's a large applique that needs a little tweak to line up properly. Very rare though. I'm a big fan of not scaling designs because I guarantee I'm going to scale. Let's say I scale it down 5% to put it on the hat, and that customer is going to come back later, and I'm not going to remember that I scaled it down, or I'm not going to see that spec sheet where I wrote down I scaled this down, or look at it saved in my software that I scaled this down 5%. I guarantee I'm not going to do that. I'm going to throw full size on the machine and think I did this last time, it should work, and I'll hit the start button, and then I'll be in trouble later. So I don't know. It's kind of a tough balance of whether or not, maybe just have one that starts with hat and then the design name, left chest, design name. I don't know what you would call a plush type fabric, sweatshirt, maybe beanie, same name, and then just hope that, you get the right file to the right person. Because if they start having to look at spec sheets to go, okay, I need to scale it on the machine, that's just another
just another factor.
Area. Yeah, and the more factors you have, the more problems there is, especially if you're tired and all you want to do is hit the start button. I just want to hoop it and hit the start button and hoop the next one. I don't want to think about it. So we've all had those days, I'm sure. I don't know if I caught this one, but Suzanne says 5% is negligible, but I'd rather do it in Willcom and save it. I guess some people go to 10%, but not worth it. Yeah, it just completely, it depends on the design, really, on how much you can scale it. It really applies to, I think, the most narrow element and the largest element. When you start getting into scale, those are the ones that you're gonna get there. So Christine says apparently there's a market for the plush nerd stars. Seize the market. Maybe, I don't know. We're gonna see what Justin suggests I do. And Cindy, I did not know that y'all's store had the nerd cap embroidery file for sale. I don't wear caps, but nice to have available. Yeah, that was something that was it was done by request. We had quite a few people request it, and I think that this is really, it's a really hard thing for me to turn and take a hat, like a physical hat, and embroider it and try to sell it to somebody that embroiders. I mean, I think that's a tough sale just because they're in the same, they're in the same field. They know what all the costs are. They know the time. And more than likely, they'd just rather do it themselves. Because
I have a hard time buying a hat in the store. I mean, I can, look at a sports team. I'm a Dodger fan, but I see a Dodger hat that, it's a great looking hat. And it's like, I technically can make this hat.
Right. So that came out. So we ended up putting our Nerd Star logo out there. I think it's only for a cap right now, but I'm sure we could change it for a shirt or something if it was needed. But I think that might be one of the ways that we're going to try to move when it comes to merch is here's the file, make your own merch. But that's a discussion for another day and in a different crowd, I think. Let's go here. Letty says, I'm so sorry have missed this. I can only imagine my digitizer is going, she now wants this on leather. Yeah, that would be, I've had that. Christine says, what I'm loving about this is that you have loyal enough fans and watchers that they want to wear your logo. That's huge. Well done, guys. Thank you very much. I'm very happy that people want to wear this stuff and rep the stuff. And it's always fun to see people at trade shows wearing it. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Comments are coming in faster than I can click on them. Cindy says, I don't agree. We screen print, and I bought a nerd shirt. You know, I think screen printing is a little bit more involved than embroidery, though. Just because you have to now burn a screen. I don't know. I don't do screen print, and so when I thought, you know, if we do shirts, screen print would be a good idea because not a lot of people have that capability in house. I could be wrong though. I don't know what are your thoughts, Justin?
I know personally, making something personal for myself, I know the work that goes into it, and I'm gonna have my printer, you know, burn a screen, and he's gonna have to clean that screen afterwards and set it up. So yeah, there's times where it's like, yeah, it's not really worth it trying to do something personal for myself.
Gotcha. I somebody asked for a link. I'm getting a link. Hold please.
Oh,
So Suzanne asked for a link. I posted that in the chat there. Mike says, I can't buy anything in the store anymore. My entire closet is S&S, Dickies, and Dixon. You know, I can tell you I've got a lot of my shirts come from S&S.
yep.
And we're going to skip that comment because it says don't tell my husband, so we're not going to bring it online in case he watches. Christine says, and now I want to do some Women Plus business and women in garment decorating merch. Actually been wanting to do that for a while. Absolutely, get it going. I don't embroider or screen print or do anything except write and talk. I bought an EMB nerd shirt too. Awesome. I'm glad that you bought one and that you
Nice.
are happy to support us. Suzanne says, I don't mind paying for edits, even if it is $5. You know, it just, a lot of times it's, I change the underlay and maybe the density and everybody's happy.
Right.
It can be just the slightest of change that'll make a big difference on going between different garment types.
Right.
Ginger says, I'm on my second year shirt. Awesome. Because we just did that. That's, we did last year's design, which was, and I don't have it sitting here, but it was the Embroidery Nerd, and it was pretty much just a vector file from a stitch file in Wilcom, and that one turned out really, really nice. It's actually one of my favorite shirts. And then this year we did the, I've got it here, but we did the Embroidery Nerd that are the last 2 letters or 3 letters are like glass frames. I'm really happy with that one too, because it's not very often that I get an idea for a design and it comes out nice when it's my own stuff. So I was really excited for that one too. So that's the second year shirt. And then I guess we're going to have to start thinking about a third year shirt now, Justin.
Yeah, we do.
So, but those were orders that were just that closed off. And so we won't have shirts available again until next year. So hopefully you guys were able to get in on that. But Justin, it looks like we're coming. Oh, I'm going to grab a couple more shirts. Comments, not shirts. Cindy says, I love the last year's shirts. It was way before I knew y'all. I'm glad that you like them. And Cindy says, I mean, if it's a change of garment type, not for edits to make the original better. Oh, Justin's got on his phone and everything. That is my favorite Embroidery Nerd logo today. Yeah. But only because I made it. I just, sentimental value. There you go. But
there you go.
We're coming up on the hour. I don't know if you have anything else that you really wanted to jump in there, Justin.
I think that's covering everything that I was thinking about talking about. But again, if anybody has a question, if they're running into a material that you're just having that problem with, or something you've never worked with before, definitely let us know, and hopefully one of us has worked with it or know what to do with it, and we'd be happy to help.
Yep, that's a great reason to be in the group. If you have questions, you can always take a picture of it. You know, do your sew out, take a picture of it, post it in the group, and now you've got an excellent. You know, there's a range of people that are going to be able to answer it. You can always tag one of the administrators so we can take a look too. It never hurts to ask, right?
Exactly.
But with that, that is Justin Armenta from JA Digitizing Studios and 3D Puff Pro, right? 2 company. Yep, got it. Pointing at the sticker. And I'm Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works, and we are here today representing the Embroidery Nerd. I'd like to thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we will talk to you later.
Have a good night, guys.